Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the UFO Whistleblower Marathon. This is a three-part series. Each one of these three men have testified under oath in front of Congress. Our first guest is Michael Herrera, who witnessed a human trafficking operation in Indonesia where UFOs were involved. Michael Herrera, you were in Indonesia in 2009. You had a UAP/UFO encounter. You were a U.S. Marine, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Yes.
And you were at Operation Ketsana, correct?
Yes, and Ketsana was in the Philippines, and we didn't participate in anything that we actually got routed to go to Indonesia in that take. We're the only ship. Okay. So a lot of people are getting confused with that. The rest of the 7th Fleet stayed there, and we were the only element to actually go to Indonesia, far western side of Sumatra.
Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you for having me here, brother.
It's an honor.
No, the honor is mine, dude. Seriously, there's so many people that are pivotal in this environment, I should say, that you've placed in this chair that have made other people uncomfortable with what they've talked about. A lot of people who understand not all is what it appears. So hopefully I get to add to that and share with the rest of the world, at least in the sense of what you're doing, because like I told you, I'm not talking to media about this.
Well, I appreciate it, brother.
Well, you're all about the truth these days just as much as I am, and it's ridiculous how much is being concealed for a narrative, and frankly, I'm disgusted with it. Because before my event, I was actually very skeptical on it. I'm like, oh, that doesn't exist. ETs don't exist. Aliens don't exist. It's only out of movies and stuff, and it scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, some of those movies. But then this event changed my life in that degree because it confirmed a lot that day. It confirmed multiple facets, not just with the technology aspect of it, but just the level of corruption and how deep this thing goes. And needless to say, it's something that was a catalyst for other things to at least kind of change my life, to start not looking into it directly, but just try to go deeper. And it was a journey. It was definitely something that opened my eyes to a lot more, because here I'm thinking my event was something that was more specific. But come to find out, I'm just a cog in the wheel with this whole big thing, because there's other facets that I'm also confirming these guys' stories to a degree. Mm-hmm. The corruption, secret organizations that have some pull in this, and obviously some of the nasty stuff that they're doing. And there's other people down the road who are going to corroborate what I'm talking about too. I don't know who they are. Maybe some of the Marines that I encountered this with too. So I'm hoping that that's what's, at least if the message gets put out there from the show, I'm hoping that that's what it does. Is it can get people to actually do something about it and not be afraid of it like I was. It was 14 years, Yeah. A lot of weight to carry. Try to sweep it under, but the more you try to do that, whatever you resist persists. That's always a golden rule.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. That's a damn good point. So just a quick synopsis here. You responded to a 7.6 magnitude earthquake and a tsunami hit in western Indonesia. Only your crew was routed to that location to provide support. Indonesia has a large terrorist population. The Marine crew was armed and tasked to provide security along with medical equipment and food supplies. But Correct. It was just your unit.
Yes.
Which there was 5 of you, correct?
Yes, there was. And so they ended up choosing the Marines out of my unit, at least in the company, to go out. So it's not like every single Marine in the company was able to do this. They just handpicked people to go on these sticks of 6 Marines. So originally it was supposed to be more of like a deterrence, but also overwatch protection, so that way these helos can drop the supplies. The logistics groups that were a part of it can then render aid or whatever it is to the local population there.
Was it volunteer, or were you hand selected?
Hand selected.
Okay.
Or voluntold, I should say.
Okay, voluntold. Good way to put it.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, what are you hoping to accomplish by coming out?
I want other people who have witnessed similar things or are part of certain things that are very controversial but end up being true to come out and understand that what's going on is not acceptable. And this is just a facet of corruption. It may not be the political corruption that's coming out now that people are witnessing with their own eyes. People call them conspiracy theories. What I'm hoping to achieve is to get other people on board to understand that the government supports what we're doing, because they were in the dark about this too. And now they're coming out and they're actually putting the hammer down. Recent bills have been passing as far as legislation through the Senate Intelligence Committee saying that these corporations have to give the goods here in 6 months or else there's going to be some consequences they're going to face either through the judicial system, which obviously the government's got a lot of weight with that. The other aspect of it too is that they're going to ban these companies from doing contracting work for the government, which means they're going to lose billions of dollars. They're going to go broke. So I'm hoping that they actually comply with this measure because one, this technology is going to help benefit humanity as a whole. Not in a militaristic sense because that's just foolish. It's more to help out humanity because now everybody's going to be on the same level technology-wise. I think the common ground here and the narrative with that is you're hearing people come out, at least in the mainstream media, is trying to talk about ETs being evil. My event had nothing to do with ETs. And there's some misconstrued concepts that are going about. The technology may have came from ETs at one point, and that's what we witnessed. But we witnessed much more of a sinister plot with this, that they're using it. So totally incidental as far as our encounter. When we went onto the slope, because we had our LZ, it was a hasty LZ, and they're dropping supplies. They have, a bunch of stuff, and it's other helos too. They're just kind of forming a perimeter on the city, dropping Marines here. You could provide overwatch. Now, the only thing that's unsettling with this is the fact that they never gave us any comms. You know as well as I do how risky that is.
You didn't have any comms?
We didn't have any comms.
Interesting.
So the Marine that was with me, it was a higher rank than me, was very pissed off about it. Because he was a Fallujah Marine, so he went through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And one of those things, I remember him kept telling me, he's like, if everything ends up going to shit, and you look at me and if I'm fine, it means that you're going to be fine. And I remember him telling us all that in the stick, and he's a good Marine. He's a very outstanding guy. Learned a lot from him during my time in. And I thought about that concept, but then he started picking things apart too. He wasn't very comfortable with that. But luckily the thing is that we were still relatively, close enough to the LZ, because when the bird was supposed to land, because obviously they were coming in, dropping the supplies, and they'd bank off. The last one that would come down would land. That's when we'd basically run to the helo, 300 meters. You're in good shape, and you have an average combat load, 120 rounds, so to speak, with an M16A4 and a Camelback. Not really much, so you can make that trek relatively quick. But they also have security on those birds too. With the flight crew, with the gunners on the sides, they had 50s on them. So if there is some opposition, they're going to meet with those on top of us engaging them. So we were positioned near the slope. It wasn't like a steep grade or anything, but it was enough to obscure what was going on the other side that we had no idea what was going on. So we got, naturally you want to take the high ground so you have observation of everything. And this is when we came across this operation. And it was something that stuck out like a sore thumb because here you have terrain that is a jungle terrain, very green vegetation, things like that. And then you have something that's sticking out right in the middle of an opening. And it looks very odd. It's something that's, I'll remember till the rest of my life. To the day that I leave this earth, I'm going to remember seeing that. And it's just imprisoned up here. I had a camera with me. It was a Panasonic cheap camera. It had kind of like, ancient compared to what you got set up in the studio, but it was enough at least because it was part of stuff that I've never did a humanitarian assistance before. Mm-hmm. So I was taking videos of them dropping stuff off, things like that until we trekked up to this point. I was taking some pictures because it's a place you would never really ever go to, at least a real part of Indonesia. It's not like Bali or Surabaya where it's like touristy stuff.
Yeah.
This is where it's actual cultured people. You're actually seeing reality here. So it's stuff that I kind of wanted to document and just say, I was a part of this. I can look back and say, I remember that. But then looking north past that slope and seeing that down, and I took some video and some pictures of that. And I had, I stuck it in my dump pouch. I was a saw gunner naturally, so I had M249. That was my favorite weapon. I liked having a belt-fed machine gun. As much as a pain in the ass, I liked having that compared to an M16 or an M4. So because we were in a humanitarian, all they did was give us M16A4s. They had RCOs at that time. They weren't the ACOGs that had the mills on the sides for windage and stuff like that, as well as the PEC-15s. So if we were doing any kind of night range or night operation, we'd have those with our PVS-14s. So it's just a very basic loadout that we were doing. Nothing really crazy. And when we saw this happen, and I want to say unidentified because right now it's identified. Everybody knows what they are now. They're either man-made or they're not. And if they're not, the government's coming out and telling people, admitting it, not directly, but they're still admitting it to a degree that it exists. Because why would they spend time with this legislation coming out?
That's a good point.
Why would they do that? If it doesn't exist, why were they going through these measures to basically hold a gun up to these guys' heads and say, you better relinquish this technology or else? They're not just doing it, and knowing and seeing this unfold, even being in this position of having to brief the Senate Intelligence among the Special Intelligence Service too, which oversees the letter agencies, because they have no idea what's going on either. But the fact that all of us coming together and making this loud amount of noise to get something done about it is just astounding. And now they're finally, for the first time in history, they're going through with this and actually trying to do something about it for their own understanding, but also know the corruption that's comes from this.
Yeah.
It's multiple different facets.
I mean, you guys already, all five of you, right, already testified in front of Congress?
So we testified to people of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which where there's some Congress people there as well as some senators. So in front of the Intelligence Committee by the Senate? And you know as well as I do, in any kind of setting like that, whether you're in a SCIF, it's all under oath still, because they're having you sign NDAs and things like that. So you're expected to be truthful with this. Mm-hmm. And seeing the reaction, it is a very big deal. It was nerve-wracking at first because I'm not used to talking to government officials in that nature. And having the support that they've been giving me as well as the protection is just something that I'm very thankful for. I'm very thankful that they all have open minds of this subject. Even though for years there's been a stigma to it. For years there's been a giggle effect because of little green men and flying saucers and all that. I myself never thought to this day that I'd ever see anything like this. So going back to the event, we decided to get in the tactical column and approach this, right? And we got down the slope, and it's just like a clearing and just has this big opening. It's almost a little bit more than the football field because this craft took up a majority of that. But having this happen on the north part of the slope and it goes down, and obviously, the way it was transitioning colors, which was kind of the way that it appealed because it was transitioning for a light matte black, a light matte gray to a dark matte black, and just kind of ranging in between, right?
Let's rewind a little bit before we get into the description.
Okay.
What was the activity with all the other helicopters? Were they active at the time that you saw the
Honestly,
UAP?
When we started going down there, no.
Okay.
And I don't know because obviously we're occupied with this.
How far do you think it was?
So from the LZ where we were at was 300 meters roughly, okay, plus the slope that was concealing plus vegetation. Down the slope, it was like 400 meters maybe. So we got close. We trucked down quite a bit.
Okay.
About 150 meters outside, 150, 200, right? Halfway. And
so maybe about a click away.
Possibly, yeah.
At the farthest.
The craft itself might have been a click out.
Okay.
Yeah. And as like I said, the reason why I know how big this thing was because...
Did you see it as you crested the hill?
Yes, I did. And that's where I took videos and pictures of this thing. That's how I was able to see it because, taking pictures of the chaos going behind and everything. You see the rubble, burning buildings, flooding and all that kind of stuff. And then you turn around and I'm like...
So you crest this hill.
Yep.
You look down into the valley.
Yep.
And there's a clearing.
There's a clearing.
With a UAP.
Yes.
Just sitting there.
Hovering. Rotating clockwise, yep. And that's in transition this color spectrum I was telling you too. And that's why it's something that stuck out. It's not a building, It's not something that you're used to seeing. Maybe topside it could have looked like a building or something that, I don't know. I don't have that perspective. I wasn't a pilot or anything, but I can tell you from our point of view, it's something that it looked very unnatural and abnormal. And that's what got our curiosity to go investigate this. Now, normally because we would have had comms, you're damn right we'd have called it in. Report something suspicious. Maybe get some eyes on a helo, get a hold of their call signs and try to do them fly around, and they never did. And obviously we didn't have comms to do it, but they were more occupied with what was going on behind us. So when we trekked down and got around 150 to 200 meters from it, and this is an opening. By the way, there's no tactical advantage being in this situation because you don't have cover. It's jungle. You have concealment, but this kind of concealment with vegetation is not bulletproof. Mm-hmm. So when we trekked up close, and we were attack column, so obviously you have points here, right, each Marine. So you have visuals of the sides. Somebody has a point and somebody has the rear. And all of a sudden, we're enveloped by this military force I still to this day don't know who they are. And
how close did you get?
To the craft?
To the craft.
Roughly 200 meters, 150, 200.
Did you get to the bottom of the hill?
Yes.
So you could see, so you saw the top of it, and then you could see underneath of it.
And underneath of it had this platform that was on the ground that was separate from this craft hovering. And it was very weird to see. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's kind of like a cement pad or something. I don't know if it was like a helo pad or anything like that at first. But then started seeing how the material would kind of look very similar to what the craft was. It's like, well, that's separate. So you have something that's on the ground, stationary, and then you have something that's up top, and it's just rotating in a clockwise position. So right when we got close to it, at least 150, 200 meters out, then all of a sudden we were engaged, at least not in a hostile manner, at least, not gunfire or firefight or anything like that. But the way that these guys moved was so fluid, it was so still, it was very, very, very smooth. And it kind of indicated to me, after thinking about it for several years, is that these guys had done it for a while because of how smooth this operation was. Mm-hmm. So when we were in a tactical column going towards the center of this thing, they actually came from the flanks, but it was more of a diagonal, like a corner of the room, so to speak, right? For them, at a tactical advantage, they have interlocking fields of fire on every single person, and they had a team of 8, right? And the gear that they had was black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities.
What you're saying is there would have been no they were professionals.
Yes,
there would have been no Mexican standoff where if they fired, they're shooting into their other squad. They had perfect angles.
Yes, they did.
To where both sides could engage you.
Yes. Team of 4, so it was like a fire team element.
Without worrying about a blue-on-blue situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, with that being said, because as they approached us, you hear the safeties flip off. Now, your attention to detail, when you're seeing this kind of stuff, your senses are very heightened, so you can pick up. I know you being a combat veteran, you know all about that. Your heightened sense of awareness is going through astronomical changes.
Hypervigilant.
Yes. So you can hear stuff a lot clearer. And that's where you kind of picked up the hum that this object was doing along with these guys flipping their safeties off, especially M4s. It's very distinct sound. Anybody in this room who's held M4s and has shot them, M16s, things like that, it's very distinct sound to flipping it off. So we kind of knew, and they started yelling at us. They were like, you're not supposed to fucking be here. What the fuck are you guys doing here? Who the fuck are you with? So they knew they were using the kind of lingo that we were using too, especially in the military. So it made me think that at some point these guys actually were uniformed military at one point.
Any accents?
Not accents. It's just like American dialects, how you and I were talking. At one point they said they were going to smoke us. They could throw us out of a helicopter. It's very easy to get lost in the jungle out here. They kept saying stuff like that. So after they enveloped us, they all pretty much got in line. They told us to put our weapons, so we all got in line as well. And we had our hands up. We had our weapons slung. And they're having 2 guys watch while there's a guy basically taking our magazines out of our vest. And they're throwing them on the deck and they're kicking them away so we don't have time to react. They also, at the same time, the first thing they did was obviously take our weapon and clear it. But they took the magazine out and they actually held it in a way to where they could pull a charging handle and collect the round and have it not hit the deck. So the way that these guys operated was very smooth. It's very calculated, very precise. You could tell they've done this a lot, or they've rehearsed it a lot. Especially combat operations, you're doing terrain model rehearsals, you're doing rehearsals whether you're clearing rooms, trying to figure all that kind of stuff out. These guys kind of did the same thing, I'm assuming, because of how smooth it was. And because as well as I do, you have new guys that join a unit and they're not that fresh. They're very choppy because they have the basic understanding of either how to stack up and do room clearing. And the guys that have done it and been through combat deployments and all that, they're very kind of methodical, very smooth because they know what to expect. These new guys, it's not the same thing. You could tell these guys were seasoned. So as they did that, they actually, each Marine had 2 guys on them, plus one that was taking the stuff off of them. They actually knew where our military IDs were because in Marine Corps order, you have to have them in your left breast pocket.
So there were 15 of these guys, 3 on each Marine.
No. So they had other guys right here, and they had 3 that were just going through each Marine,
okay,
while other people were holding each Marine at gunpoint. And they're not like super close to us range-wise with, because if you get a muzzle close, it's easy to grab it and, kind of fend off, especially with a rifle. But these guys were off at a standoff distance that even if you try to move, they could smoke you.
One search team of 3 guys.
Yes.
And then the rest of the squad was aimed in on you. Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, they're not anywhere where they could actually, there was people behind us because obviously if they had to engage, they're going to hit one of their own guys probably. So it was more like they were kind of moving the same way through all of us, all 6 of us, taking our stuff. taking pictures of our military IDs. So they had like these devices that kind of look like a very thin. It looked like a smartphone modern day right now, because in 2009 it wasn't the case. I think the most high-tech thing they had at that time were maybe Blackberries, but they're bulky at that point with the ball, and then they had their flip phone razors and things like that. But these look like something you'd see today. And they were taking pictures of military IDs, and they had some other device that was like reminded me of a BAT system. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Describe it.
It's like a biometrics tracking system. So what it does is when you come across with an insurgent, you can take pictures of their face, their retinas, fingerprints, something like that. But they were trying to scan their IDs with this thing, and it wasn't working. So they're kind of getting frustrated with it. So as this is going on,
did they collect biometrics from you?
No.
Okay.
No. They took pictures of us, but that may be enough. And then they took our IDs, because some people I talked to that are in the special operations community with that, they said, yeah, we have the ability to scan IDs, and it tells us everything about you. Military IDs, driver license, things like that. So it's very high speed stuff. And considering this was in 2009 compared to now, of course, they had this thing that they were using to load up stuff. It's very advanced physics, something hovering off the ground, not making any sound, but an audible hum, like a guitar amp or something that's like a transformer.
So it wasn't like, it didn't sound like a jet.
No.
It didn't sound like a helicopter.
Hell no.
There was no engine noise.
Nope.
Just a hum.
Just an audible hum. It's very creepy to see because it's not normal.
Was it like a bassy hum?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Like a guitar. Like if you were to unplug it, it wasn't the same pitch, but it was like the same kind of sound, same kind of noise that it emitted. And so as they're searching us, we're watching this thing happen. And that's when we started seeing trucks come from our left and go onto this platform. And they were up armored 350s. I know exactly what 350s are. They were kind of beefier trucks. They were matte black. When they were coming at us, and they go left. And I was glancing between what was going on in front of us with these guys, and then all of a sudden glancing over to what was going on behind them. And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. Had a pyramid structure on top that was black, and you can see the shadowing of it as it rotated. But it was rotating very slow. And then it had like these vents on every single corner on the middle part of these the panels anyway. There was like a Vanta black. It was like a dark black that would like absorb light. Very weird.
What do you mean by that? A dark black that would absorb light?
So if you're ever familiar with the BMW, they painted Vanta black. It was like a very super dark black. It's not like a reflective material at all.
The matte black?
Yeah, but very, 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 even darker than matte black.
Okay.
Like you can shine a light at it and it won't even illuminate.
Like the Batmobile?
Kind of. Okay. Something like that. But even, it was like very dark. The only way I can describe it was like that Vanta black.
Okay.
And
when you mean absorb light, you're saying if I shine a laser on it, you might not even see the laser.
Correct.
Or it would be very dull.
Correct.
Okay.
Something like that. So we're watching these vehicles, right? These trucks. Now, the thing I would say on the front of them, because Humvees, the military has, they have the IR lights on the front near the headlights that you can drive at nighttime with your knots. So they had the same thing because they had the same kind of slits that had the IR lights. But they had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And, you could store like a couple hundred weapons, maybe 100 weapons, maybe a platoon, a company-size element. And it was the same Pelican casings that we would use to store stuff when they were transporting, So very big cases on 2 of them in each truck bed. And then they had a shipping container thing. It looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. And the thing that was different about this is it had a cylinder on the front of it that was towards the truck. It was like parallel to the ground, just a cylinder right on the top of this thing. And for years I thought, okay, there's got to be oxygen supply or like a vacuum sealing thing that you would, because obviously I'm thinking it's drugs. I was like, okay, so this is a very advanced way to do that, just years of thinking of this. And come to find out, when I gave my speech in D.C. on that Saturday for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer, he's got a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, by the way. And this gentleman, I'm not going to give any detail. I know a little bit about him, but he works in some of these projects at some very controversial facilities. He's aware of what was going on. After I gave my presentation of this, he confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he went explaining what the operations do, why they do it, and what they were using them for. And he says, it's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
Human trafficking.
Yes. His own words. And, he, of course, and he also wants to come forward, at least with him and 30 other people that are involved with that part of the work. But it was very disheartening to actually get that information relayed to me, because here I'm thinking for years it's drugs and it's a much sinister thing. But it makes sense because they use natural disasters that people are going to be missing anyway.
Yep.
Scoop up people.
I mean, I've been covering human trafficking this year.
Right.
And that's, a lot of the human trafficking comes from third world countries in distress. You're in a third world area.
Yep.
In distress, right after an earthquake would be, it's prime.
Yeah.
Prime time to do a human trafficking operation.
Right.
How big were the containers?
I would say probably 8 feet and 10 feet. 8 feet tall, 10 feet within.
So like maybe half a Connex box?
Yeah, about that.
Okay.
And they were kind of like on the trailer that was underneath was kind of like a regular Humvee trailer that you would see kind of pull stuff, something like that.
How were they being lifted into the craft?
So they were driving onto this platform that was angled, so it would hit, and it just raise up, and they were just driving on this ramp.
Oh, the truck would go up?
Yeah, but the whole thing was a ramp.
Okay.
Like a circular ramp. And I mean, obviously I can't see what's on the other side of it, but I'm assuming because it's a circular pattern that it's going to be the same on the other side. Because they would drive onto this platform, and at that point I saw all the doors open. 4 guys would come out, and then I'd go back to what we're facing here with these guys searching our stuff, asking us questions, taking our IDs, trying to intimidate the crap out of us. And so I can see the guys come out of the truck. And that was making me think too, like, at a tactical advantage, we didn't have that. There's only 6 of us, basically trained infantry Marines. And there's these guys here that are, doing this operation and very skilled, very methodical, very calculated, very precise. And if there's 8 of them, and then all of a sudden every single truck has 4 of these guys, I know that it's not just these guys that are running the perimeter. They could have been 40 or 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
Could have been a platoon-size element. And the fact that we have no concealment, we barely have any concealment, because if we were to run and bank off the sides here to go to our flanks, they could just engage us. There's nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
Vegetation ain't going to stop bullets, But so there's a lot of questions I have too, because it's, obviously if we would have engaged them, then the whole rest of the force behind us would know about it because they'd have heard the commotion.
Yep. How many containers do you estimate were put into the craft?
4, because I saw 4 trucks.
4 containers.
Yeah. And there could have been more, but at that point where we saw, we could have, because we stumbled onto this thing. We ruined their operation, so to speak, because we weren't allowed to see that.
Let's talk about the craft.
Okay.
How big was it?
300 feet is what I'm estimating, about a football field. And the reason why I say this is because we flew on CH-53 Super Stallions. I'm sure you're familiar with those, your time as a SEAL. They're roughly 100 feet. All right, so from nose to tail, if you lined up 3 of them, it'd fit 3 of them under this craft. Because I can see, especially the operation behind us, you kind of see them off in the distance. So you try to gauge, as a Marine, you're always trying to judge distance, you know what I mean? Because if you're having to engage, but lo and behold, we end up having a surprise right here happen with these guys. But that's how I know it was around 300 feet.
Okay. And it was circular.
Circular. It's like an octagon because it had like corners on it. That was like an octagon shape, but still circular.
Could you see, was it one smooth piece of metal?
No.
Was it panels?
Panels. Yep.
Just describe more. Were there windows? Were there openings?
There were not windows, nothing I could see like that. It just had that Vanta black vent-looking things on each corner is all I saw with that. And it had like an octagonal scale pattern that went through it. It honestly reminded me kind of like a design for an F-22 Raptor.
Okay.
I like the top of it kind of looks like that. Yeah. That's what it kind of reminded me of because it would transition those colors. So I suspect, I've had people I've talked to about this to say, well, Lockheed Martin has reverse engineer stuff that's circular. Raytheon, they have triangular craft. And he said it might have been Lockheed because Lockheed also made the F-22.
Interesting.
Similar design concept. Now that I think about it, right, because at this time you're not really thinking about it. You're like, I'm more concerned with these guys and who the hell they are. So after we witnessed the last truck going on there, and we're still dealing with that. I got searched already, of course, and I'm just paying attention to what's going on. I'm making sure my guys are good too. And all of a sudden, the trucks, we never saw them again. They were not on that platform. There was like boxes and stuff that were on that platform. And so I'm assuming they either drove off on the other side or disappeared or where they went. I don't know. But all of a sudden, we noticed that this platform raises off the ground by itself. It doesn't make any noise, by the way. It doesn't disturb anything.
Before it started gaining elevation,
yeah.
How high off the ground was this?
The actual craft?
Yes.
I would say probably 20 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, good distance. And the platform rose up, but I would say like the platform was up several feet, right? Probably maybe 5-6 feet, because it was, from the distance, probably about half an inch.
I mean, I'm envisioning the way you're describing this, I'm envisioning an octagon.
Yep.
Rotating clockwise with a drop ramp similar to maybe something you would see on the back of a C-130, C-17, but circular.
But circular and separate. There's no cables. There's no...
Okay.
Yeah.
Was the ramp attached to the craft?
No.
So there was just an opening?
There was just an opening. Like the bottom part of the craft, was what I'm assuming, because that's where I saw it lift up and go into. It was like the bottom part. It was like the floor itself was like the platform, and they were just rolled up, right? But at the same time, the top part leveled a little bit and went down to meet with this. And as that happened, you start to see it rise up past the tree line. And it's not like it's super fast and just rapid. It's just like kind of slow. As that's going on, the rotation has not changed. The audible hum has not changed. But
it's not like somebody hit the gas and you hear a different
Yeah, it's nothing like
noise.
that.
It's
just constant.
Okay.
Each point on that octagonal shape started to illuminate colors. Like, and it was just one color per point. It was red, it was green, it was yellow, and it was blue. It was the only colors I saw, and it was rotating, right? As soon as it got to the top of the tree line, like cleared the trees, this thing shot off to the left. And to the left was the ocean, by the way. This was going west.
How far to the left was the ocean?
Probably a good 1.5 miles, maybe.
That's it?
Yeah.
So you're right on the coastline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, I would say, it could be 1.5 miles to 3 miles, I'd estimate, because I mean, that's just estimation. I don't really know, because it took us a little bit when we landed into the near Padang City, because we landed at the airstrip, and then we took like a several-minute flight going from southwest to like northeast part, roughly. So I'd say probably a couple miles to kind of estimate. And like I said, it didn't change pitches of noise or anything, and it just completely shot off. I mean, it's just like a blur that went left. Didn't make a sonic boom like you'd see a fighter jet when you see the pressure that, the way that happens. It didn't disturb any of the trees like what rotor wash would do on a helo or a jet flying the map of the earth and leaving exhaust and blowing you kind of see Top Gun movies when it cranks up on that. Nothing. There were even coconuts that you could visibly see on these trees. None of them were disturbed.
No shit.
Yeah. And me, I like aircraft. That was my thing. I wanted to be a pilot, but that didn't happen. I wanted to fly the Harrier. And I know about aircraft. I know everything that we've got. I know everything about them. From a little kid, that's all I wanted to do. But obviously, then being infantry was the next best thing. So it wasn't something I've never seen before. Something I know that we didn't have, at least in the conventional wise, on top of the military force that was there. So as that took off, we're all of a sudden ordered to face that slope that we came down. And then, like I said, it's not very high up. I mean, it's high enough to obscure everything to kind of go down in the valley. And so as we turn around, I'm like, fuck. They're going to do it. I think they were just going to, fucking rip us right there.
Yeah. Or they're going to kill you.
Yeah. It's like...
Before we get to that...
Yeah.
When you saw this thing take off, I mean, do you have any estimation of speed? Have you seen anything? I mean, was it faster than anything you've seen before?
Yeah.
Was it a normal speed?
No, it was faster. It was the fastest thing I've ever seen. It was, I would say, probably 4,000 or 5,000 miles an hour. I mean, it was instantaneous. It was just like it left a blur.
Okay.
Like a jet screaming by going as fast as it possibly could, you can still make the shape of it and still lock your eyes onto it as it's going. There's no way in hell you could lock your eyes onto this thing as it's moving. That's how fast it was.
Okay.
And eyesight, something moving, your eyes are naturally going to pick up that motion. And this didn't do that. I mean, it was just like, it just left a very fast blur. And like I said, I've never seen anything like that. The way that it moved, the way that it didn't make any sound, completely, didn't change pitch of the hum or anything like that.
Did it go at an upward angle? Was it a straight line?
It just looked like a straight line from what I could see. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it went up in the sky or anything. It was just like went over the trees and was gone.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, knowing aircraft and things like that, it just wasn't something normal. Something completely faster, something doesn't make any sound. I mean, radar signature, I have no idea, but there's theories that maybe the design of it could not reflect radar signals. I mean, I don't know how that go. I'm not, I don't work in that project or anything like that, but it's just something that's very odd to see. Very, very alarming.
Did the lights stay on as it took off?
Yep. But you couldn't even see the blurs of lights even. It was just this black blur that just left.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, it was creepy. It was fucking creepy to see.
Yeah.
And, of course, we're like dumbfounded because you've never seen anything like this. And this is like some Hollywood shit, Make the ships from Independence Day look like a joke, with how fast this thing was. So it was very, very, very weird to see that. And like I said, as we were ordered to turn towards the slope that we came down, and that's when I thought it was it. I thought they were going to smoke us, and they kept saying that, we can kill you right now. They're as this is going on, they're talking shit. They're looking at us. They're taking pictures. They're doing, everything that they're trying to do to clear us. So as we turn this, and all of a sudden, I see a sling pass over my head. I'm like, oh, fuck, they're going to strangle me. But that wasn't the case. They actually tightened it so well that when they placed it, and, it's crossbody, and obviously the buttstock of the rifle is up on the right shoulder and the muzzle's kind of more towards your left. And they tightened the sling so well that if you try to get it off, it's going to struggle, right? And they started putting the magazines in, and they put all 6 of them in our vest, but they put it in a way that wasn't tactile. They put them like right side up where you can see the brass, right? Because brass to the grass is usually what we always train our Marines to do. So you just take it out, pop it in, boom, right? And they did in the case it would be tactical. It wouldn't be a tactical advantage to do that. So by the time you get your weapon off, try to put a magazine in and charge it, you're already going to get smoked.
Yeah.
So
you were standing up when they did this?
Yes. Yep. And when I saw that sling come over, I mean, I was like, fuck, I thought they were going to strangle me.
Were they talking to you as they were doing this?
Yes. That's when they were saying they're going to, smoke us. They're going to kill us. They could shoot us, leave us here to die, stuff like that.
Why do you think they were doing? I mean, it sounds like they were taunting almost.
They were. And I think, my personal opinion is I think they really wanted to kill us. But if they made because they didn't have suppressors, they had M4 A4s. They had like the high speed setup. They had actual ACOGs. They had the honeycombs on them. They had the PEC 16s, which is a step up from what we had. They had steel magazines. Their weapons were like they were brand new.
Do they have nods?
No. They had ball caps, though.
Ball caps?
Yep. They had no insignias, nothing that would signify what their rank was, nothing that would signify what branch if they were. There's nothing to identify. And, law enforcement agencies will typically try to be uniform with all black, so you can't really identify who they are specifically. And it's like how these guys were doing the same thing. Because I know in AOs, at least where you have friendlies, you want to identify who's what, because that's how you're going to coordinate between everybody, who's friendly, who's not. So if you're having to do anything like airstrikes, close air support, CASEVACs, you know what to say and what they look like. Paint the picture for what you're getting into to provide other people that intel. And these guys were just uniform black, ball caps, and it's just, it's very obvious that these guys didn't want to be identified, but they had American dialects, they had American lingo, similar to what Marines would use, or at least military. So that's why my suspicion is I think that these guys at one point were uniform military, and maybe they got swept into this program, whatever it is.
Could you see their faces?
I did. Three of the guys had facial hair, right? Kind of stubble. Some of them kind of not really long beards, but like an operator look, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rest of the guys didn't. Some of them had kind of blonde hair, at least that you can see from right here. Some of them had like black hair, and then just regular white complexion. Some of them had blue eyes, some of them had brown eyes, and I think one guy that I saw had, he was the one that was mainly focused in on us as we were getting searched. And you can see he had kind of like grayish blue eyes. So I don't know what military force. I mean, obviously it's not conventional.
Yeah.
Because, the question, if they ever come out and if they decide to ever do this and say, yeah, I was there, it was these guys, I would have a question. The question would be, why did you let us go? Or what were you guys thinking? Or why were you guys doing this, for the matter? Because this isn't something that, me consciously, there's a lot of things, especially finding out that this happens to do with human trafficking. Morally, I could never do that.
Yeah.
That's a touchy subject for me.
They might not know.
Yeah. And that's just it, too. I mean, they could have. I mean, maybe the guys in the trucks were more of the darker side of things that were doing the hands-on, and these guys were securities. I mean, there's so many theories with this. I've seen some flack on Reddit about this. And you got all these armchair quarterbacks like, oh, I wouldn't have surrendered my weapon. Oh, yeah? So you get pulled over by a cop. And he's got his gun drawn in because, there's some people that's their interaction with police because they're known to be violent people. The cop is not going to take any chances. They're going to pull out their sidearm and they're going to approach the vehicle like this, tell you to get the fuck out, right? Are you going to chance anything if this guy is shooting you if he's holding you at gunpoint?
No.
No, you got kids. You got a wife. You got a bunch of stuff to live for. I know these Marines had the same thing. But it's always these people who are going to talk this shit who are not there. Because I know for a fact that I'm here today talking to you about this. I was here, talking to the Pentagon and talking to all these other people about this to testify to them and tell them what happened. And I'm glad that, I'd rather get the flack than to have to sit there and actually, whatever story they would have spun up to say that, maybe one Marine got PTSD or something, decided to kill his own squad and then kill himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, whatever they would have spun it to be. If these guys have this kind of technology and these resources, they can do anything.
Yeah.
They're above the law, clearly. So as they gave us our stuff back and we're going up this slope, they're still talking shit. They're still saying, we could kill you. Don't fucking look back or we're going to smoke you. So as soon as we went over the top and all of a sudden we didn't, they weren't pursuing us and we fucking hightailed it. We ran down this fucking slope, trying not to trip over shit, go to the LZ, and there were still helicopters flying. They were flying relatively low with the shipments that they had that were attached, and then they were landing, dropping the stuff off, and then they were taking off, right? And they were just coming and going back and forth. There was a gunnery sergeant there that was not in my unit. I think he was attached to the ship. It might have been kind of like their logistical support unit or whatever it is because I know each ship has a logistical support for Marines, right? That are on the ship, either active security, whatever it is. There was a gunnery sergeant there, and he was like fucking pissed because we showed back up and we weren't supposed to. And then we had our weapons, so what were we conditioned for? We tried to play dumb, so obviously we kind of like set up a perimeter and then we adjusted ourselves. Some of my guys, they'd help us get our stuff unslung and then we'd load it back up and, act like everything was normal. But I can tell everybody's faces were like, what the fuck? Very, very concerning stuff. And here's the thing, though. If stuff is still going on to this day, which I'm sure it is, because if they're, come to find out, and I know you probably know this, human trafficking is the biggest revenue generator for these guys, for these organizations. Second's drugs, third is weapons. So if they're hitting all three, and obviously they're not going to want to give up their operations being known for that because it's illegal. It's not going to sit very well in the public eye. A lot of people have children. I personally don't have kids, but I know you as a dad would not fucking stand for that kind of shit. Yeah. Because then you have the thought in your head that it's going to be my kids are going to end up like this. That potentially could. And it's not a very comfortable thing people realize. And having them known to see this happen, it sucks. And this is kind of more why I'm pressing towards getting the resolution done with this, to make the government aware of it. Because if that's going on, it's got to be stopped. That's some evil nature right there. And I can't believe that there are actually people participating in this. And if they know about it, fucking shame on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not even, something that happens in the United States. It may, it definitely does. But to see it in operation, because think about it, it's perfect cover. Because let's say if you're hiking somewhere out here and you see that unfold and you try to call the police, you try to call, federal, state, local agencies, or even the military for that matter, try to report this, are they going to take you serious?
No.
They wouldn't.
I mean, it's becoming more and more common as time goes on. But yeah, it's what sucks about this is we're in this time period where everybody knows. Not everybody, but it seems everybody that I know knows that the media is false. Yeah. It's fake. They don't report everything. They lie.
No, they don't.
You know, and but at the same time, a lot of people won't put any validation or trust in anything that hasn't been covered by mainstream media. So we're in like this time period where there's a transition happening.
There is, and it's thanks to people like you. And I'm glad that there's people with me doing this too, that, you know, it's easy for people to sit there and try to judge what they would have done in these situations. And the bottom line is we have gotten a point in our life, and I don't mean us specifically, but I mean the rest of the world, where they get so disturbed with things, but they don't do anything about it. They want other people to do it. Oh, I'm unhappy with the situation. Well, fucking change it or help change it. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the word out there. We're trying to get the government, at least the right parts of the government, to do something about this. And the only thing I'm thankful is coming public with this information, at least if something does happen. And I'm not going to rule that out. But if anything does happen, and it kind of proves what we're talking about to be true. And the reason being is because they would not be going through these measures to try to intimidate for no reason.
Yeah.
We're keeping people up at night because of what we're talking about, and that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I even told these government officials when I had my meetings, I'm like, first and foremost, you guys need to understand something. I am in the right state of mind to do this. I don't feel like harming myself. I don't feel like, you know, because everybody makes the joke that Epstein didn't kill himself. No way in shape or form related to that, right? And so same goes here. Like I have no means to harm myself. So if anything happens, it's not from me.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that needs to be on record, and people need to understand that, because if something does, it's not because I turned a gun on myself or anything like that. I mean, it clearly, these guys, it doesn't matter what rank you are, it doesn't matter what position in government you have, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. If you're going against what they're exposing, what they're doing, they're going to get you. So if something does happen, I'm just putting it out there that it's not from my own doing. I don't fucking piss anybody. Maybe in the business world to a degree, but it's not enough for them to sit there and do something like that. And I'm glad that I have a private security firm where I've got some guys who look out for my best interests, and they know what I'm doing. So they've got my back, realistically speaking. And, you know, and that's the thing too, is any other whistleblowers who, you know, because I urge other people to come out. If they're needing protection on the way, I'll help with that. I'll orchestrate. But two, the other thing is too, coming out in the fashion that we did was the best, because now the right people in the government know. So it's almost like having a pit bull that's one to rip you to fucking shreds, but you have this fence that's between you and this pit bull. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the government's going to be that fence, and along with the spotlight that this put me in.
Yeah.
Because it's unsettling to sit there and see these helicopters, man. It's just, it's hysterical. You sit there and wave them, but it's like, keep wasting your fucking money.
Let's talk about the debrief that happened afterwards.
Yes.
What happened when you got back to your command?
So when we got back onto the ship, we ended up returning our weapons to the armory, went to our berthing, put our gear away, went back to the flight deck. There was this admiral there. I'd never seen him before. I don't know who he is. But it's just very out of place. He gave a debrief saying, hey, this was good that you guys are doing for these people, which I agree with. But I have no idea who he was. But, I've been on 6 ships, did several humanitarian operations, and not once have I ever seen an admiral on any of them. You know, and this was minor compared to the one in 2011 we did with Fukushima and that natural disaster. Never seen an admiral with that, right? So it's just very out of place. So we went to, after we concluded this operation, we ended up docking in Subic Bay for some liberty. It was at least like 4 days. So the people that we encountered during that event didn't even bother to take my camera or anything. It was in my dump pouch, but it was small enough, so I don't know why they wouldn't have searched it, but they missed it, right? So here I am the whole time thinking like, fucking A, I've got something. I'm not fucking crazy, and neither of us are crazy. Like, we've got something that actually backs up if we were to tell anybody about this, and we can show them pictures of it off of a camera and not something like a computer screen where they can doctor it. Well, I spoke too soon, because when we ended up going out that first day, we came back to report back to the ship, and I saw my camera on my rack. And the memory card was out of it, and it was a big memory card. And the battery was out of it. And I just see the camera sitting. I'm like, what the fuck? So I checked my locker. It was secure because that's where I had it. And I had some stuff on top of the camera in there, in my locker that were on top of the camera. And I had another battery in there. So I took that battery and I put it in there, and it wouldn't even turn the fuck on. And I had some people reach out to me that said, you know, if you had that camera still to this day, that they could do some data retrieval and maybe able to pick it up. I'm like, but I don't have that camera. You know, I tossed it because the fact that it wouldn't even turn on, it wouldn't do anything. I'm like, fuck, it's just a paperweight. And of course, 2009, you're not thinking of anything with forensics, you know, where they could do something. There was people actually willing to do that, which is great. So somewhere out there, somebody's got this footage. Somebody's got that tape because there's some reason why they took it. And fun fact is that the other 5 Marines that were with me, they had their phones taken.
Did you look at the pictures before? Did you have a chance to look at the pictures? I know I took pictures and
videos of it because I saw the record thing and I actually can snap the photos and you can see like it blink. That's one way to describe it. So I knew for a fact.
But you didn't go back and review them? Okay.
No. Nope.
Why not?
One, I didn't see it, want anybody to see.
Okay.
Just for that reason. You know, it was just something to keep, you know, if anybody doesn't know about it, then if I start telling people, then obviously there's things that may happen. And of course it did happen regardless. Because as soon as we're out in town, all these people, you know, I don't know who it was who did this, by the way, but they didn't even cut my lock. They popped it off somehow because my lock was still intact. So these guys are obviously know how to do it, and I don't know who it was, but all of a sudden the other Marines had their stuff taken too. And anybody in the platoon, they didn't have any of their stuff touched. It was only us that were there.
Did they take anything else?
No. Nope. So after we get done with that, we end up going back to Okinawa, right? And this was a regular normal day. It's probably fast forward a month after we end up getting back. All of a sudden, a duty Marine knocks on my door and says, "You need to report up to the CP." I'm like, roger that. So I get my cover, run downstairs, run over, and there's nobody there. I'm like, well, what? This is fucking weird. And all of a sudden, like, I go inside and there's like this big opening in his office, and then they have like these little offices that have these doors that you can walk into. So all of a sudden, I'm greeted by somebody in Air Force dress blues, and he didn't have a cover on, but he had salt and pepper hair, white complexion, older gentleman. He didn't have a name tag on his uniform, which, come to find out, Air Force regulation states that you have to have a name tag on your uniforms. You know, Marine Corps, we don't do that unless it's our camouflage or if you're a drill instructor or some kind of instructor or some sort of billet that requires you to do that. So he calls me over, and I go over, give him the proper greeting of the day, and then he tells me, go ahead and sit down over here in this office. So I sit down, and he doesn't even bother to sit down. He just says,
you, though? Wasn't the other 5 Marines?
No, they end up having the same thing happen, but this guy did it separately.
It's all individual?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't all together. So he told us, again, with what you guys saw, you're not allowed to report this. You're not allowed to talk about it to your family, not to your chain of command. I don't care if a general even asks you. You can go to prison for this. You could be executed. And if you want to chance that, by all means, but you need to sign this. So I take the paper and I look at it, and it's a non-disclosure agreement. The only 2 things I can recall to this day is that it said TSSCI and it said Indonesia. Those are the only things I could recall. But I skimmed through it and I fucking signed it because here I am thinking, okay, we're just going to forget about this whole fucking ordeal. And yet this is getting thrown in our face, and here's somebody threatening our fucking lives here with, imprisonment, death, things like that, if we're to talk about this.
Did you ask him any questions?
I tried to ask him who he was, and he didn't say anything. There's some speculation going on about this because people who know about this, whether it's other whistleblowers and other people who have came forward previously, have said that these guys have the ability to impersonate or even play off as their military officials or anybody for that matter in the government to try to extract information to see what you know. So I'm not, because it's odd that he didn't have a name tag. He had the only thing I could tell is that he had a stack of ribbons. Air Force gives ribbons and medals for just about anything, but he had silver jump wings is the only thing I can recall. So other people I've talked to in the military community are still active, just trying to get information. And now they know because I've came out. They were saying that if it was an Air Force officer, that has to do with someone Air Force intelligence, because a lot of them had jump wings, and that's kind of the thing that they like to do. He says it's because he didn't have any pilot wings or nothing that would signify he was a pilot. It was just those silver jump wings. Yeah. Just with the parachute, and they had the wreath that come up like this. That's the only thing. And obviously he had the silver oak leaves on his shoulders. But so after dealing with that, it's like, okay, signed it. I'm like, great. Just fucking leave it behind. The rest of my career, don't tell anybody about it. Didn't tell my family. I told my dad before I ended up getting out of active duty and going reserves. I said, there's something I got to tell you. And he even told me this, when I started coming out publicly about it, and after I had gotten through the right part of the government to go ahead and proceed with this. And now he understands what I was trying to tell him, because I said, I just have to wait for the right time to do this, because I don't know. I'm kind of freaked out, it's something. And at that point, 2017, is when I met Dr. Greer. And then fast forward to recently in April, making this happen with the government and telling them and testifying and briefing them what's going on. This paramilitary organization kind of looked very similar. Obviously, this was in the 90s, so they didn't look that dissimilar to what I saw. But he talked to a paramilitary organization. He talked about the noise that this craft made that he saw that was shot down, had a hole in it. So it was a guitar amp, because that's the only way to describe it. If it's reverse engineered, it's going to mimic the same kind of technology that these actual crafts have, right? This paramilitarization, well, yes, that's how they operate. They're not going to be identified in any kind of way. It's going to be a generic black uniforms and gear. So, of course, and, everybody's like, oh, at least the Reddit that I'm seeing, and they said, oh, the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Okay, that's another thing. And it probably wasn't the same guy, but the same method. There's only one word that comes to that. It's called corroboration.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time that this guy's saying it. It's not the first time that other people have said this. But the thing is, people only pay attention to them when stuff's thrown in their face, such as what I'm doing and what these other people are doing. There's going to be people who are going to come out after me who are going to talk about the same thing. I know I'm not the only one. And maybe I can get one of my Marines, that were there to actually come forward, and maybe, ideally it'd be all of them, but I know how this goes. And one guy responded when I had these government officials and Dr. Greer trying to bring one of them forward, and he said absolutely not. He sent a text message saying it's not worth the risk to my family, my life, my career, because he's still in the military. He's a commissioned officer now. And he was very repetitive about that, and he says, don't ever ask me to do this shit again, and you need to get the fuck out of whatever you're in. But it's the response that when I asked him to do this, and that's what he responded to, what else could it be?
Yeah.
So in a sense, that kind of corroborates it, but it corroborates the seriousness of how they're in fear of their life.
Yeah.
The other guy, I didn't hear from anything. And even taking my social media down, because after I started coming forward, I just don't want people blowing up my fucking inboxes, trying to ask me details or questions or try to get interviews. I'm not about that. I'm not, the fact that our lives are kind of coming to hell to a degree because of being pursued with these helicopters and things like that. There's other ramifications that may happen that I'm not aware of, but you know what? There's a risk to things, and that's how this is going to happen. And if that's what's chosen, then I just got to figure out how to mitigate that as well.
Well, let's talk about, we had spoken offline a little earlier about all the media that's reached out. I know you had an article in the Daily Mail.
Daily Mail, and then obviously the other facets that are related to Daily Mail published this. Well, they misconstrued a lot of that, and then they end up going in from David Grush to bashing Dr. Greer about it. So it was something that they trying to use to get people's attention, and they go into this fucking narrative. I've had News Nation, I've had CNN, I've had MSNBC that reached out through LinkedIn, through other emails, because my email gets blasted all over the place these days. And I've got 4 emails, so I got the fucking shitty one I hand out to people because I don't want to get spammed through my business emails, because that's money that's sitting on the table if need be. And I decline every single one of them because I know that they're going to push this false narrative. The false narratives that they're evil ETs, and this is what David Grush is pushing now, saying that, they're malevolent and they've seen ETs die, or you've heard ETs kill people and things like that. Well, first and foremost, if there is a species of extraterrestrial that's out there and they happen to be fucking malevolent, it's not wise to shoot their shit down or kill any of them, because guess what? They're highly advanced. Yeah. If they can make this kind of stuff, imagine what they can do if they weaponize it. So it's something that, this needs to stop, because all it's doing is just it's just portraying fear out to people.
Yeah.
They did this with COVID. You see the response of that. People are still living this way, living like COVID exists to this day, which it probably does, but it's not nearly as damaging as what people are saying.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as was hyped up.
No, it wasn't. And you still have people fucking afraid of their lives. And this is the thing that is sad to see that. So now that people are thinking about this going on, now that all of a sudden worst case is going to happen. It's just this whole fear being portrayed in the media to try to scare the shit out of people, either get ratings or try to get people tuned in their networks, is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more of a personal game for them because they get money off of views. That's why I'm glad I'm off, because guess what? I don't get to see that anymore. I get to focus on what I'm trying to do. And for me, having people reach out to me that have open minds and they're like, you know what, I actually heard about something like this happening in Vietnam. Or they like, I heard about this happening in 2004. And then there's people who are coming out that are participating in these operations unknowingly because they think the constitutionality of it's legal. And it's not. And that's why this is happening, because these people think that at the end of the day, they're doing something that's oversought. And they don't know that degree. It's very compartmentalized, as you know, being a CIA. You know, they only know what they're told, and they only know what they're briefed on and what they're allowed to have access to. It depends on what they're doing.
That's how they keep it secret.
Yes, they do. And not everybody's going to know that. You know, so I hope that anybody who's in those industries understands that, you know, if there's anything that seems off, you know, don't approach it how the guy that was at the Pentagon that talked about U.S. forces being involved in Ukraine. I'm sure you heard about that because you saw FBI HRT raid his house and took him into custody. And he's probably going to sit in prison for the rest of his life because of revealing classified information on these platforms.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that. And these guys that are with me that are doing this, they're not doing it either. And the thing is because he did it that way means it's illegal because it's classified material to a degree. It may be illegal, but he screwed that up. Now, the way that we approached it was because we contacted the government and said, hey, this is what I know. This is what I was subject to. And they were, of course, because I approached it in the right way, they're going to reward you with the protection, with the law that they passed to make sure that you are well protected, regardless of what happens in a legal fashion. So these other whistleblowers need to understand that. So they can come forward. They're going to have the same protections. That's why I can paint them a picture and tell them what to expect. I can point them in the direction of who they need to talk to. You know, and just the humanity needs to understand that this false narrative that's going to be portrayed in the media, such as alien invasions and stuff like that, it's been planned since the 50s. There's documentations talking about this. As far as SAIC, or Science Applications International Corporation, talks about the stagecraft. You know, honestly, if you're somebody who's such a high developed species or something like that, it's like walking by ants.
Yeah.
Are you going to fuck with them? No, you're just like, there's fucking ants. They just walk by. I think like the same thing that they do with us.
Yeah.
Why are they going to fucking try to fuck with us? But the same thing, we all of a sudden start shooting them down and then reverse engineering their stuff and then trying to weaponize it. And then we're using it against each other for nefarious activities, trying to use fucking, you know, these advanced projects to do very illegal, very dangerous stuff. It's just, it blows my mind how much this goes down.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just, my goal is just to hopefully get this fucking changed.
Well, I hope it does.
Me too, buddy.
We'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Cheers.